Welcome to the Tier 1 Podcast, bringing you interviews with the brightest minds in the shooting industry. Get unique insights to help you shoot better, survive longer, and outperform your competition. Brought to you by Tier 1, the world's best shooting accessories.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on episode 4 of the Tier 1 Podcast. We've had a little bit of a break, apologies for that. Bit of a long wait for this one, but it's going to be absolutely worth it because this episode we have the master of long range shooting, Frank Galli. Frank is the founder of snipershide.com, which many of you will have heard of. You may even be active on there. And actually Frank was so generous with his time, we've had to split this one into 2 podcasts. It's just over 2 hours worth of recording. So in this first, in part 1, we've got an hour here and we cover a few really cool points with Frank, including his story, so how he got started with in his military service and with snipershide.com in 2000, how he developed early PRS style shooting competitions as well, and how PRS actually was fully fleshed out and developed on snipershide.com, which is a cool bit of history if you're into that. He also covers weaponized math. If you don't know much about that, stay tuned because it's pretty amazing stuff. Also, how to properly true your ballistic calculator. And crucially, I think everyone can benefit from this one, the biggest mistake that people make when they buy new gear. So quite a crucial one. I think we've all done it. Also, finally, we round out with what's essential gear for long range and how do you choose from the insane amount of stuff out there. So this episode is packed full of useful tips and tricks, and Frank is a really cool guy. So definitely worth tuning in and listening to this one. And don't forget, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have part 2 as well, finishing off this podcast. So that's enough from me. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Enjoy tips and tricks from the master of long range shooting, Frank Galli.
Hi, everybody listening to the podcast. You got Frank Galli from Sniper's Hide. Many of you guys know me as Lowlight out there. Been Lowlight for a long time. Run the website, do training, and to give you a little background on me, I was a Marine Scout sniper, enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 17, and then went to boot camp, did all that, went to infantry training school, and through there, they kind of wanted me to go to the recon side of things. Went over to do some of the recon stuff and then didn't get along is a nice way of putting it with one of the lieutenants there. Right. I had a lieutenant that him and I butted heads. And so I went over to the grunts to the line units, 1-2, and it was the right before they were reopening the Statue of Liberty. We had our Statue of Liberty under construction for years.
Right.
And Reagan was going to reopen it. So they needed Marines to go up there as part of the International Naval Review. They had tall ships. I remember there was a tall ship from Spain right next to us. And, they basically have the water parade go by. And then the new Statue of Liberty was unveiled after the repairs. Well, during that trip, I got picked to go to that trip. There was 2 snipers there. And I had said, hey, listen, I'd gone to recon. This is what happened, but I'm in the line unit now, and I want to go to State Platoon to be a sniper. And they were like, yep, cool, man. We want a guy with a recon background. That's great. So that was July for the 4th of July. And I was a PFC at the time, which, no rank at all, really, just got in. And then we went to Bridgeport, California for our mountain warfare training. And then right after that was October, was the start of sniper school for the next class. And I was a student. So they kept their word. They let me go to sniper school. And I actually, my teammate who was a corporal from the unit failed out, but I passed and graduated. And
nice.
Yeah, all of this is happening with the background of the Iran-Iraq war going on.
Right.
And so we're getting ready to kind of ramp up in that area. And they created the first Marine Corps Special Operations Capable Unit. And so the training was all changing. Prior to that, we were all doing Vietnam and World War II doctrine. And so now they said, hey, the Marines are going to be a little bit more special operations oriented. And this was going to happen in conjunction with this float. So I go over to the Med. I do a Med float. And that's when the Iranians start getting a little froggy in the Gulf, and they mine the Straits of Hormuz. So they grab a bunch of us. They create a MAGTAF, which is a Marine Air Ground Task Force. There was 40 ground Marines, and then like another 100 for the air crew. And they put us on a ship and they send us back over. And now we kind of get engaged in the Iran-Iraq war under what they considered an Operation Praying Mantis. Or not, that wasn't Praying Mantis. That was Earnest Will. Sorry, getting reversed. So I'm doing Earnest Will, and one of our ships hit a mine.
Right, wow.
So the USS Roberts hit a mine, and we go and retaliate against the Iranians. So in the 80s, I was able to get combat action and do some stuff, which, it was a little unique in the U.S. I mean, certain special forces people were going out and doing small missions, but as far as big military, not as much. And so that kind of laid the groundwork for me to be involved in that type of operations early on. I get out of the military, and I'm doing private investigation work, a lot of workers' comp, insurance fraud, things like that in the New York area is where I live.
Right.
And so I was actually a licensed New York private investigator. And so.
Oh, really? Are you from New York originally?
Connecticut, but right on the border. If you turned out my driveway, you would be in New York. If you went left, you went right, you were in Connecticut.
Yeah, right.
So they recruited me because they had a job that nobody can get near anybody. They had 3 people who were doing insurance fraud against Amtrak, the train system.
Yeah.
And it was millions of dollars. And these 3 guys were working together, but lived in rural areas. One lived upstate New York. One lived by Amish country in Pennsylvania. And then another was mobile. He drove around and did like flea markets, very weird stuff.
Yeah.
But he lived in his car mostly.
Wow.
So the guys that lived in the rural areas, nobody can get near him, because whenever a vehicle showed up to surveil him to see what he was doing, he would catch him.
Yeah, of course.
So a friend of mine said, hey, you were a Marine sniper. You got a ghillie suit still. Can you go sneak into this guy's, front yard and film him, working on his house? Yeah. And I said, yeah, sure, I could do that. So, of course, I did it. That all worked out. And not too long after that, I started the Sniper's Hide website. That was in 2000. So I had just gotten divorced and said, okay, what do I do now? I'm like, well, we were chatting. There's actually people on Sniper's Hide right now who were there that day.
Wow.
And we used the website at the time that kept crashing. And you'd get 10 people on, it would be okay. As soon as you got 12, the site crashed.
Yeah.
And so we complained, and somebody said, well, we ought to do something. So I made Sniper's Hide and created my own site
to
fill in the blanks. And then when Sniper's Hide got really popular, I got recruited from Jacob Bynum out of Rifles Only. He was down in Texas and had a training facility. And now 9/11 just happened. The wars are going on. Matter of fact, my current girl I met during that time. We've been together since then. And, so he came up to Connecticut and he said, hey, you need to come to Texas. You need to move your website from the internet to real life and do things with us down here. Because Jacob was known for hosting pretty much the only competitions in the U.S. There was like 2 or 3 tiny ones, but Jacobs was known as a bigger sort of tactical competition, precursor to PRS today.
Yeah, okay.
And so I went down there, shot a competition, and at the time, as the wars are ramping up, the contracting started.
Yeah.
The military's looking for outside instructors because, again, the incestuous training from Vietnam was still happening.
Right.
And so, Jacob was a big fundamentalist guy. It was called Rifles Only because he worked with the Safari Club.
Okay, yeah.
And he did a lot of ammo and a lot of work for guys that went on big game safaris.
Sure.
His dad, it's funny, the first time I met his dad, he had just come back from Africa and lost 2 rifles in Amsterdam because they went from Africa to Amsterdam, got off the plane in Amsterdam to spend a couple days and had their rifles with them.
Mm.
And so the government took their rifles because they didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. It was like $50,000 in 2 rifles.
Oh my God.
So this was the kind of money the safari people were spending.
Yeah.
And,
right. Back then as well. That's
right. So that's how Rifles Only got started, was through that kind of safari type of deal. Well, to kind of go back with you guys, and it's kind of a Jacob story and not a Frank story.
Yeah.
But there's a connection. When Jacob was on a big game hunt, he was in New Zealand hunting tar.
Oh yeah.
And he was shooting something, I forget. I don't want to say it's a wallaby, but something similar to like a nuisance animal.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was shooting them at like 1,500 meters with a 300 Win Mag, an AI, in fact.
Right.
And it caught the attention of some Australian SAS people who happened to be over there, who said, "Hey, we're getting ready to do a 338 program. You should come over because we haven't seen somebody just, knocking off animals at 1,500 like this."
Like it's nothing. Yeah.
Right. And Jacob was just knocking them down like it was going out of style.
Mm.
And that's what created the military side of Rifles Only, was work through the Australian SAS.
Okay. That's interesting.
And then those guys used to be up in Texas all the time. And I met quite a few of them that used to come and work, and not necessarily work there, but they did, but they hung out there. Because that was their point of contact in the U.S. when they came into the U.S. for their other training that was going on.
It was in Texas. Okay.
Yes. And so that brought me down there, and that got me working full time as a precision rifle instructor.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the background from there. And I know it's a long story, but
no, it's good. It's a very interesting story, actually. It's like it's all over the world as well.
It really does, because we do travel around quite a bit. But so I'm down there working and doing that, and we start creating the competitions around our training. So we looked at competition at the time to validate training. So we would do, a couple weeks with military classes, then we do a few civilian classes, and then twice a year we did big competitions.
Right.
And we would take the after action reports from the military guys.
Right.
And
so they compete.
Yeah, and turn it into a stage.
Okay.
So we'd say, okay, this guy, had to run up to a neat wall. He had to rest his rifle, with no bags and no stuff at the time. And from the kneeling, he had to shoot and neutralize a target at 800, yards there. And we would design it around that.
Right.
And like, in fact, I have, I don't know if any of your listeners have ever heard, but they can go look. There's a U.S. Ranger who's written books called Nick Irving. He writes the Reaper 33 books.
Okay.
Nick was a student. I have like his mission notes from those 33 missions.
Really?
Yeah, right here on my desk. And we created match stages based on these mission notes.
Wow.
And that's how this worked. And
when was this? Like, what kind of era?
2003 it started, and then the high point was around 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And then I left Rifles Only in 2011.
Right.
And PRS started in 2012.
I was going to say, it sounds very PRS-y. You know, it's like you guys were doing it first.
Oh, big time. Well, before the PRS came from what we did, because they started it based on the Rifles Only events.
Right. Okay.
And it actually started on Sniper's Hide. I've created sort of this adversarial relationship with them. But
okay, yeah.
But because I don't like kind of how it developed in a way, but basically they started the whole thing on Sniper's Hide.
Really? They started PRS on Sniper's Hide?
Oh, yeah. It was all flushed out. It was all discussed. It was all worked on, because our matches, here was the problem. We have 75 people in a match.
Yeah.
Well, we would say your match is going to, registration opens on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. At 10:02, it was sold out.
Wow. Okay.
And so you really had to either come to a class or know us to get into the match, because what people didn't realize is we had sort of a pre-registration list.
Right.
And so you really, that 10 a.m.
Like a guest list.
Yeah, it was really only like for 10 people.
Yeah.
Because we had 65 names of people we wanted to shoot with already. It was more an invite thing, but it wasn't publicly announced as being invite.
Okay.
We would say, hey, we like Harry, man. We want to shoot with Harry. Harry's going to come to the match. And if Harry, if you say, hey, man, you would call me up and say, hey, I really want to get into your match. Hey, dude, you're in. I like you. You're good.
Right.
And I put your name down.
Yeah. And then it's pre-filled.
Well, but then I tell you, go register anyway.
Okay.
But then we go look down the list and go, okay, Harry, yep, he registered. He's good. He's on the guest list, And I mean, we've had guys from the UK. I still have we've had about 4 guys used to shoot our matches from the UK. One of them is a British Airways pilot, and he comes over. Him and I have lunch, dinner, breakfast, because he stops in Denver, about every 3 months.
Yeah.
And we still get together. But
nice work if you can get it, hey? That's that's not bad.
No. But the matches were like, we wanted you to answer a question. Basically, it was to validate your training. Were you fundamentally secure in doing the barricades? And barricades were shot very different back then.
In what way?
A barricade today, like the skills stage, is kneeling, standing, kneeling. Right. That's the skill stage. Well, we used to do like 3 shots sitting, 3 shot kneeling, 3 shots standing, and then we would go to a prone, but we would change the time limits up, smaller, different targets, but it was sitting, kneeling, and standing, because that 3-step barricade is designed to replicate a supported shot, a wall, an obstacle, anything that you might come in contact with.
Yeah.
If it's a short wall, well, then you practice your sitting. If it's a little taller wall, well, then kneeling to get over the obstacle. If the wall's taller, then you go standing.
Yeah.
So we were testing all 3 of those elements with a barricade, and we used to do paper, shooting C's on paper with them, more so than steel. And that way there, we kind of wanted you to kind of get inside that 3-inch shooting C.
Right.
From that 100-yard, or we were usually like 150 until they made them permanent, but then they went permanent at about 100, 110 yards.
Right.
But that was the idea, was so you could practice those stages. I mean, we used to do stages where you shot off the barrel. We would put a chain link fence or a barbed wire and say the barrel has to go through, and you'd rest. And everybody who came to a Rifles Only or Sniper's Hide match knew what their offset was if you rested your barrel on something.
Right.
So I mean, we used to do a whole lot of more practical.
It's clearly all inspired. Sorry to cut you off. It's clearly all quite heavily inspired by like military experience, right? Like it's stuff that like firing positions that you would really have to use in a combat environment.
Yes,
at least that's what it sounds like to me.
It was, because we were dealing with for 3 weeks on and then 1 week off there. We were dealing with military guys all the time, and all the higher end units. So we would see, how are they operating? How are they? Because we never teach tactics.
Right.
We're just marksmanship and fundamentals and how to apply the rifle system to your tactics.
Right.
Because I'm not going to come in and say, well, you need to do it like this. It's like, well, maybe that's not your mission.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. That's up to them.
Right. But we could say, hey, if you're going to run the gun that way, a better way of doing it might be, a little more contact on that obstacle. Your hand position could be compromised. Make sure you get your trigger control here. If you're rolling something over or getting under a vehicle or doing these things, maybe don't roll over prone and do supine. Maybe do a Hawkins position instead.
Right.
It's about giving somebody that tool in their toolbox versus saying, you have to do this.
Yeah, sure. Wait, did you find your students were pretty good? Like, were they already fairly skilled, or did you have to teach them quite a lot?
The military side was very good. The I will say the biggest thing we found with them is, especially when they went to the semi-auto platforms, they were going to other training for their M16s. So their M4s and M16s, they would go to 3-gun guys or speed guys.
Yeah.
And then when they started getting their M110s, or for them it was Mark 11s before the 110. But if they had a Mark 11, which is a semi-automatic 308, they would do a cone of lead. So if they missed the first shot, they would empty the mag on the second.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that was the goal for us then, was to try to convince them sort of the one shot, one kill mentality, where put a value to the follow-up shot instead of, because like the first couple of times it happened, you'd have a guy and you'd run him up to test them, and you'd say, okay, run up here, drop down, shoot that target.
Yeah. And
they'd run up, they'd drop down, they'd shoot the target, and they'd miss, and they'd go bank, and that first shot would go off, and then all of a sudden you'd hear pop, 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 pop. And then you go, all right, dude, what are you doing? And they tell you, they say cone of lead.
Right.
And it's like, oh, no, let's do this a little better.
Right.
So yes, they're very good because they're in great shape. They're smart because the special operations guys have to have a certain sort of set of smarts to them. Their aptitude scores have to be higher than most people.
Yeah, it can't just be meatheads and
right.
Yeah.
And so they take instruction really well. And so, they do well, but there is definitely, you're fixing that incestuous training because
there's inbuilt behaviors, it sounds like.
Well, because the military, how they normally operate is they don't say, you go to combat, like right now in today, you went out, you went to Afghanistan, and you're a good troop, you did your job, everything was cool, and maybe you had a mission and it gave you a little bit of a reputation. Everybody, wow, high fives, man. Harry did a good job.
Right.
You come back to the States and they go, okay, so-and-so's rotating out of sniper school. We need a replacement. Harry's a good dude. Get Harry over there. He slayed a bunch of guys. Right. All right, Harry, you're an instructor.
Yeah.
And it's like, you never taught. You're 22, 23 years old. You never taught anybody. You don't have formal education in this. You're a good troop.
Sure.
So they hand you. Yeah, they hand you the same paper that they handed the guy before you.
Yeah.
And they say, do this. Just talk about this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give you that sort of next level. It's just it's regurgitating what the person before you did.
Right.
I mean, because I don't know about you. I don't know your background as far as any military or anything, but I mean, if you have
no military experience, no. Unfortunately, I wish, but unfortunately not.
I can tell, like my combat experience is super limited, but it's there. Yeah. I mean, it's tiny. It's a little raid, no big deal. Yeah. I wasn't learning anything there. You're not learning. You may learn what not to do. You may learn don't turn it this way, don't go that way. But I'm not thinking about my fundamentals. I'm not looking at how I run the gun. I'm not looking at these things. I'm basically neutralize that, get to point A to point B, and get home.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good experience to have because it teaches you sort of, this calm under pressure. It teaches you to manage yourself.
Sure.
But is it really teaching you to run a gun? And that's why the military guys, go to the civilian side where I don't have to worry about getting there from point A to point B anymore. I don't have to worry about
specialize.
Yes, I don't have to worry about scuba diving. I don't have to worry about parachuting. I don't have to worry about ruck marching. All I have to do is shoot my rifle better than the next guy or be able to teach the next guy how to shoot the rifle better than the other guy.
Right. And you have the freedom to keep innovating, of course.
Yes.
Because, you're not hampered.
Well, and then because it's not a stepping stone where the instructors don't stay there, which you don't want them to stay there really, especially in that environment. Yeah. So I can then focus and go, okay, we're teaching everybody this. Maybe it's the mill ranging stuff. We're going to flash mill a target.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what's an easier way to teach it? Well, we could do that rapid target engagement, with the number system. Right. Like the weaponized math that we've been doing.
I saw that. I saw a little bit of that.
Right. So we can sit there and go, all right, so like to give everybody example of like the weaponized math we're talking about. We created a ballistic calculator that doesn't use any calculations really. It's just one number that we're multiplying. We created a single multiplier and we actually just put it in a hard copy chart form so you don't have to actually do the math, but it's a percentage base because we figured out doing these classes as much as we did that it's X percent from 300 to 400. It's X percent from 400 to 500.
Right.
And it doesn't matter caliber. It doesn't matter anything. Meters, yards. The multiplier is going to work to within 2 decimal places, really.
Is it a constant? Is the multiplier a constant? Or is
yes.
Yeah.
Because, and this happened recently, I'm teaching a class, and I teach my Alaska classes with my platoon sergeant from when I was in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
Him and I are still friends.
Cool.
We worked together. He was a scout sniper instructor, went to instructor school. He was with me in all the deployments. We reconnected and we teach. Well, he was in our classes. I record your dope. We have a God book. So for us, as a student, I'll come up and say, all right, Harry, we're going to do 300 yards, put a mill on the gun, and, we'll get you fine-tuned in. So we put a mill on your rifle, you shoot 300 yards, and maybe you're 0.8. Okay, 0.8, Harry, write that down. That's your number. Well, I just wrote down for you 300 yards is 0.8. Yeah. So we took all this data, and we were looking at it, and we found, regardless of caliber, it was within a percentage point.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was very eye-opening. Yeah. And so Mark flushed it all out, gave it to me, and I shot it and did it. And then we had guys on Sniper's Hide look at it. We said, hey, everybody. I mean, now Sniper's Hide is big, right? So there's 500,000 unique people, 8 million viewers. So we have a big
Wow.
audience.
I was gonna ask about that. Yeah, that is big.
Yeah. So I can throw information out on there and say, check my math.
For sure.
And then people are able to come back to me and say, hey, it works for me. It was off right here for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And what we found is there was only a 1/10 difference between 800 to 1,000.
Right.
So now, without a ballistic calculator, without knowing your dope, without knowing anything, you can take this weaponized math, and all you need to know is the target you hit before.
Right. Right.
Excuse me. Your data on previous engagement. So if I know I use 0.8 to hit at 300, I do my multiplication for the 400. It's going to give me a number, and I guarantee I'm going to be within a 1/10 at 400.
Wow.
And it's hard.
And that's never been done before. No one's noticed that before.
No, never been done. It's a percentage base, and I probably have a data book behind me somewhere, and I can grab and even give you the numbers off the top of my head because I don't have them quite memorized. But yes. And so now when we teach a class, I have a laminated copy of this chart. Yeah. And you could be mil or MOA, you could be whatever, but then I'm helping you learn because I could say, all right, you're an MOA guy. All right, you used 10.5 MOA at 500 yards. And it's like, all right, you use 10.5. Well, what's your 6? Multiply that by this. That's your 6. I go to the next student and I go, okay, you were mils and you were using 3.2. Multiply that for the next, and that'll give you your 700.
Wow.
And it's going to.
Does it work like out to an infinite distance, or is there a point at which you run out of, or the multiplier is no longer accurate? Like if you get like 2,000 yards, 3,000 yards, does it stop working?
We've only done it to 1,000.
Right. Okay.
So we haven't played the multiplication beyond that.
Right.
You start like I said at 800 because I'm at 5,000 feet above sea level.
Right.
It's about a 1/10 off of the other, or it's a percentage point off actually. So I have to manipulate the numbers to go out farther. We'd have to start manipulating numbers, and it would be, and the atmospheres are kicking in so much.
Yeah.
It would become different for everybody. You would be different from me.
Right. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I've been watching a few of your videos, just to get a flavor for the way you teach and everything, and you take, probably because of your marine background and also because of like the amount of training and immersion in the subject that you have, you take so much into account. But one thing that blew me away as well was the amount of math that you can do in this, and how many things you can take into account, which kills me because I'm not a numbers guy. So it's so easy to fall back on the Kestrel or the ballistic calculator or something. But I'm following your videos and trying to do it manually. Is that something you always teach, is to get people to do it manually first? Or are you happy for people to use the calculators?
A little of both. And it is, because think about this. If I have a handgun, right, I take my handgun and I can do my gun finger, right? So I got my finger out, my index, and I point at something. Yeah. So here in my office, I'm going to point at a picture on the wall. If I have a handgun in my hand, I'm going to hit it.
Yeah, for sure.
If I'm going to do a carbine inside a room, if I'm going to do a carbine pretty much inside that 100 yards, if I point my finger, I'm going to hit it.
Yeah.
Granted, there's a mechanical offset for the carbine. I get it. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to go inside a room with a carbine, I point, I hit.
Of course.
If I'm going to go be inside my house, I point, I hit.
Yeah.
With my precision rifle, it could be, 1,200 meters away.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be about 18, 25 feet above it.
Yeah.
and then I'm going to be another 10 or 12 feet to the side of it.
Right.
And now I have to figure out where in space, 18 feet high and, 10, 12 feet to the left or right, I need to point my rifle in order to hit it.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I understand the principle. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to understand the math, but I'm not opposed to using the calculator. But what I do with everybody with a calculator is I call it that don't get distracted by your dope. And with our phones and our computers, they're a distraction, because I'll go into my philosophy on this for you.
Yes. Yeah.
So what happens is, here's the mindset. Guy goes out and he's going to buy a Tika 6.5 Creedmoor. He's going to buy a TAC A1. He's going to put a Steiner M5 or something on it.
Yeah.
And he's going to go out shooting. He's a happy camper.
Yeah.
So he goes and he buys the rifle. He gets a couple, case of ammunition. He orders his scope, and it's going to be in the mail in a week. Well, what's the first thing he does when he gets home? He downloads a ballistic calculator.
Yeah.
And he starts putting numbers in.
Messing around, yeah.
He's right, 'cause it's on his phone. It's a game, and he's
can't help yourself. Yeah.
Right. And now he doesn't know anything about shooting. Or very little, I should say.
Yeah.
So then he goes to the range the first day to zero the scope, and he struggles. Maybe he takes a whole box of ammo to zero. And now he's going to start doping it out. And 100 meters, he's all good. Maybe even 200 meters, no big deal. It's, 2 minutes, or he's a 0.5 over, something like a 6 or 0.3. So that dialing up 0.3 is no big deal. He can see that.
Sure.
But now he goes to 300 and he's nowhere near, and he doesn't know what's going on. And he looks at his ballistic calculator, and the ballistic calculator says, hey, man, you need 1.5. And he puts 1.5 mil in. And he can't find it. He's nowhere near.
Yeah.
Right, because he's a half mil over the target, because he really needs like 0.8, And so he's struggling. And he's looking at his phone, and he goes, but my phone says. I read on the internet that this ballistic program is the best program I can get, and my phone says 1.5.
Yeah.
And he struggles. But if we explain to you, and we say, listen, here's how my class goes. That morning, we're going to dope out the rifles. We put everybody on the line. We give them that weaponized math, right?
Yeah.
Or in the past, they were getting the number from me.
Right.
What do I do for 400? Here's your number. What do I do for 3? I'm giving it to you. What are you learning when I give it to you?
Right. And that's a baseline you're giving them.
Yeah. Well, I know, like with a 308, it's from 300 to 600-700 yards. It's 1 mil every 100 yards. If you have a 308, add a mil, you're going to be close.
Right.
If it's a 6.5 Creed, 0.8, 0.8, 0.8. So I can get you there.
Yes.
But now with the weaponized math, we're giving you a real number and you're learning something. So I have you write down your actual dope. So now we've shot for the last 4 hours. You have from 200 to 1,000 meter doped out. No phone, no calculator, no Kestrel.
Yeah.
Well, now let's take that numbers, because they're good. We know what they are. We just did it. Let's go in the classroom. Now let's true your computer.
Right.
Your
With
computer,
real data.
Yes, your computer has to match your rifle. Your rifle can never match the computer. You know what I mean? And so
yeah, absolutely.
We're trying to put this logical order for you to follow, rather than you fight the system trying to get, struggle with the computer, where it's instead of somebody playing with their computer for a long time, it's done really quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things we do, because we do, like, I tried every method to start people off immediately with their software.
Right.
Well, I would do the 100-yard zero. I would chronograph every rifle.
Yeah.
And then we would plug into the computer, and then it'd still be off because we got to true it.
Right. Okay.
Well, then we tried a 300 drop method where we did all that 100-yard zero. We chronographed your rifle, and then we shot with no dope on the rifle, 300, and measured the drop with a ruler.
Right.
Wasn't right for every rifle. I had a Valkyrie that shot point of aim, point of impact. It's like, what the heck's going on? Because there would always be one student in the class.
Yeah. It didn't work for.
It didn't work. So then what we started doing was no chronograph. Throw the chronograph out the window. If you're reloading and you're doing all that, great. Buy a chronograph. If you're just going to go out and shoot, use 600 meter, dope your rifle to 600 meter, and then line the muzzle velocity on your computer up with that.
Right, okay.
So now you take your 600 meter drop, line your muzzle velocity up in your computer, because problem is if I chronograph my rifle, the computer's going to change that number anyway.
Right.
Because that's how they true. So why bother going through the effort when I'm just going to, so, some guy gets 2750 and the next thing you know, the computer wants him to use 2680 or 2810.
It's funny because a lot of people online do push the chronograph and, talk about it. It's essential, or I'm not saying professional people do it. I'm saying, just commenters,
Yes. Well, it's a product. Everybody wants to buy it. But the thing is, and the reason I say, if you're reloading and if you're creating your own, round, it's essential.
Yeah, of course.
If you're a casual shooter and you're going to depend on a computer, the computer's going to change that number anyway.
Right.
So what you would do is you would put your muzzle velocity to 600, then go to either 800 or 1,000 and shoot again. So now you got a 600-yard drop, and you got either an 800 or 1,000. Well, when you get your 800 and 1,000, if it needs to be adjusted still, if you need to fine-tune your computer, well, then you use BC.
Right.
So I've tweaked my muzzle velocity to make the computer happy at 600. At 800, I tweaked the BC to match the two. Now, if I move around, if I travel, if I do anything, think of a set of scales, okay? Truing your computer is two scales. You got a left hand, right hand, and the pan of the scale goes up and down.
Yeah.
Well, if I only depend on muzzle velocity in my left hand, and I put more weight on that, well, muzzle velocity with more weight goes down. The BC side is going to go up of the scale.
Sure.
So now I have like an imperfect true. Well, if I take in and balance the muzzle velocity and then bring that BC back into alignment, I've now balanced the scale again.
Right.
And what we found is it's a lot less variations when you move location. It's a lot like, because for me, being in Colorado, but mile high of sea level, if I go to Florida, which is almost below sea
swamp,
right. If I go there, I have to retrue my computer in the old one. If I follow the instructions that Kestrel puts out to the public, I have to retrue. If I manually do it the way I just said, I don't. And they actually kind of tell the military to do both.
Really?
Yeah. And so, like I just said, they kind of give a little different instruction to the military than they do the civilians.
Yeah.
So here's the other problem. If you're going to use the complete Kestrel functions to true, you need, like for a 6.5 Creedmoor, you need about 12 to 1,400 yards for the subsonic part.
Okay. Go on. Sorry. Go on.
Say, where do you get 1,400 yards to shoot to true your Kestrel?
Like maybe Scotland, that's about it. Wales is pretty empty. Not where I live.
Yeah, but if you look at the DSF, when you go to put that number in, it's beyond the range most people have access to.
Yeah, for sure.
So our way of doing it sort of cheats the system, but in a way that most software worked prior to this. Because like I said, I have software that goes back to the 2000s and stuff that was on Palm Pilots and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
And we've always trued both elements and never just one. And yes, there was a period of time where the software people said, oh, just do this with muzzle velocity, and it sort of works.
Right.
But the deeper we get into it, the more variety we put behind it, the less we see it works without doing it again and doing it again and doing it again.
Just constantly resetting it.
Yeah, so that's I'm not anti-software at all. I have every piece of software ever made, probably.
Yeah, sure. I expect you get sent a lot of stuff all the time. Like try this, try that, try.
I do. I have 2 phones just because one of them is 100% just for software.
Wow. Okay.
My Android is just to run software because I'm an Apple iPhone guy.
Sure.
And so a lot of times software writers will write for Android first. And so for me to run test stuff, I have a phone just for that. I have I have like test setups when people do send things.
Yeah. Yeah, of course Android is a more open system, isn't it? And Apple's quite sort of restrictive on what they allow in the App Store. So from what I've heard,
Yeah, and even like for you guys, I have a Windows phone as well. I don't have.
Do you?
Yes, I have.
I didn't know they still made them.
They don't really, but it doesn't have a SIM card in it. It just hooks to Wi-Fi. But my Windows phone runs Cold Bore, which is from Patagonia Ballistics out of Argentina.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So his software only runs on Cold Bore. So I have a phone that I just turn on and off and you connect to Wi-Fi, but doesn't make any phone calls. Yeah. But that's the system that it needs to run that software.
Do you think, because you've sort of answered the question about the importance of software. It is important, but also do the analog version. But I'm seeing a huge shift in the industry, and I think you referenced this in one of your videos, that post 9/11, the long-range shooting industry, the civilian side changed massively. There was like a lot of development, a lot of changes happening where the old style of, like to use your phrasing just now, the kind of Vietnam War, World War II style of stuff went away, and you started developing these new systems. And with it came a ton of new technology and a ton of new accessories. And now you look at the market, like I was at SHOT Show in January, and you look at there's so many different stalls where they're developing one tiny piece of the rifle system or of the software, but they're developing it into this, to the nth degree. And if you want, you can go out and spend 50 grand on gear, like tomorrow. But obviously, you don't need all that gear. There's 2 questions out of that. One, what is the essential gear for somebody in long range, or is moving into long range, or is doing a little bit and wants to get serious about it, but not blow the bank? And 2, where do you see that going in terms of the US gun industry? Is it good for the industry? Is it creating confusion? What are your thoughts? It's money. The military invested so much money, and like the special forces guys were getting unlimited budgets early on. Right. I think it took like forever for Canada to finally go to their SF guys and, hey, you guys have to give us a budget because, we can't keep going unlimited for you. But yes, and so it is changing. It is going electronic, and it is biting people. So there is a downside to electronics. And now essential gear, and to be serious, that's a loaded question in a lot of ways. Sure.
You need your rifle. You need a good rifle, right? And I, like I said, I'll go back to the Tika platform. I think it's a great platform. Yeah. So you get a Tika TAC A1.
Yeah.
Or even a T3.
Yeah, sure.
T3X, right? But I'll stick with the TAC A1 because it's more of the military look with the chassis system, and it's more of a crossover. You buy that. Now you want to get a good scope. Put it and top it with a good scope with a usable reticle. The reticle is the key point of a scope. Now, there's 2 elements really. there's your elevation, your usable elevation. You want to make sure that has enough for the caliber you're shooting.
Yeah.
And then you want the reticle in sort of that adjustment system that works for you. So the reticle and the turrets have to match. And you want the one that when you look at it, your mind says, yes, I understand this. Because it's a ruler, right? So you don't want a ruler that's in a foreign language to you. You want a ruler that's going to speak to you. So that's an essential thing.
Yeah.
Well, then from there, right, you need good ammo, a rear bag, and then I always advocate, I'm a bipod slob because I've seen bipods matter. So you want a good bipod. You know what I mean? A stamped sheet metal Harris is your lowest common denominator. Does it work? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are they out of square? Are they out of spec? Do they bounce on the springs? Are they, hard to deal with? And are you going to do more than you should on your side of the rifle because you're running a Harris? Yes.
Right.
But will it work? Absolutely. So you want a good bipod in that. So I'm definitely in that essential equipment. Then, like bag-wise, starting out, you need one bag, a good rear bag. Okay, so you need the rear bag. Now, as you progress, you're going to want to go into the competitions or do something, even on the military side. If you're going to be serious and you're going to move to the next level, well, then there's a 2-bag solution. So one is a Saracen, a Warhorse type, a Game Changer. The heavy, it's a support bag. Okay. Yeah. So you need a support bag for the rifle.
Yeah.
Then the one is you need the pillow or the support bag for you. So to me, that would be the essential products right there. Is that now the last missing part is you either need the data book or you need the computer.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going with the computer, you better have some kind of backup, hard copy piece of paper. I think hard copy to me is always going to beat a computer because of weather, conditions, things like that. Now, if you're a guy out there listening and you're strictly a phone guy and you're going to run software on your phone, I will tell you, if you come to my range in August and if you put your phone down and you shoot your first yard line, and then you get your dope for your next yard line. And then I say, okay, hey, we're going to talk about this shot we just take. And I spend 10 minutes talking to you. And then I send you back to your rifle. Your phone's going to be shut off.
Yeah.
Because the heat.
Oh, really? I thought you meant just like the screen has gone off. You mean the heat's going to kill it?
Yeah, because I'm a mile closer to the sun.
Right.
It's going to be 90 degrees and it's going to go into thermal mode immediately.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's the weakness in the system straight away.
Right. Now, your Kestrel is better because it won't have that happen. But then, you might run into cases where, you get out of your car, you're walking over, you dropped your Kestrel and your guy drove by. Your buddy pulled up. And right when you dropped your Kestrel, he drove up and drove over it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now you just broke your Kestrel. What are you going to do?
Oh, you're screwed. Go home.
Yeah. Or you're spinning it. To get the atmospheres, you're spinning it and you let go of it and you fling it and it breaks. Maybe, maybe not. But anyway, so I always consider a hard copy backup. To me, that's essential gear. That gets everything done. Now then from there, you can look at laser rangefinders. I'm a big fan of them. I honestly don't see, yes, mill ranging is a legacy skill, but it's 600 meter and in.
Yeah.
It was for your personal danger space. It wasn't meant to range something at 900. It was meant to range something at 500.
So it was originally a military technique.
Yeah, because it was artillery for me. I have a 600 meter danger close window.
Yeah.
I have a radio.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, inside 600 is my personal danger space. I'm threatened by everything inside 600.
Yeah,
so
you got to take it out.
Right. After that, not so much. I have time and opportunity to do my job. I can look at the map. I can do, all kinds of things, reference points. I can throw artillery out there if I want.
Yeah.
I could drop a drone. I could do whatever I have to do. But inside, they're going to be a little more hesitant. I better be in trouble before they're going to drop it.
Right.
So that's why there's different ways of doing the job that way that people don't have the context. Because we only see an image, just like, you do bipods. So people always look at the pictures of the snipers from my era shooting off their backpack, their ruck.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to throw, you guys are Bergen, right? So I'm going to throw my Bergen down. I'm going to put it on top. I'm going to drop on top of it and I'm going to get my shot off. And then I'm going to pick up everything and I'm going to go. Well, what they didn't know is my sniper rifle, my M40A1, didn't have a bipod and had no way of putting one on it, even if they had one.
Really?
There's no mount. So what we used to do is we used to make a tripod out of our tent stakes with 550 cord.
Oh, wow.
If I was going to be in a more permanent position, I can make a little tripod with my tent stakes. I could take my 3 tent stakes because I'm going to carry them anyway.
Yeah.
I could wrap them with 550. When I get to my location, I just turn them to the side and I create a tripod and I can put my rifle on it.
Huh.
But if I'm moving and I'm moving a contact, well, then I'm not going to take that out of my pack. I'm not going to put all these things together. I'm just going to drop my pack down and I'm going to shoot off it.
Yeah, yeah.
No more than 3 shots from any one position and displace.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's cool tradecraft.
Yeah, I don't want to catch an artillery round.
Right, of course. Yeah, mortar or something. Some guy's got eyes on you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to eat a tank round or something. And I actually know somebody who it was a friendly fire situation, but there was a sniper on Overwatch, and the infantry saw him. And what was the counter? They sent the tank round after him and actually kind of hurt him a little bit.
Oh, Jesus.
But they use a tank,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're not going to risk themselves. Just put a shell in there.
So context with precision rifle is the lacking part of it. That's the missing element.
You've been listening to the Tier 1 Podcast. Brought to you by Tier 1, makers of the world's finest rifle accessories. Find out more at tier-1-usa.com. And tune in for more great insights on the next episode.